Hello, bonsoir, and welcome to the Get French Football News Show. I'm your host, Nathan Staples, and joining me this week are French football journalist Mohamed Ali and GFFN writers Eric Devine and Philippe Bargil. 10 weeks in, and Liga is firing on all cylinders, and it's also firing the occasional manager as the first casualties have occurred this weekend. But who went? Who will come in? Can things get better from here? All this and more after the latest headlines. Monaco started the Ligue 1 weekend off in fine form, thumping injury-hit Montpellier 6-2. Youngster Kylian Mbappé-Lotin contributing a goal and an assist as Raya Boudou scored from a free kick and the spot for La Payade. Saturday's early match deepened Lyon's domestic woes as their fine performance against Juventus in the week was followed by a shambolic defending as Marcus Coco's brace was enough to power visiting Guingamp past the hosts 3-1. In the multiplex, two of the league's form teams clashed, with Toulouse dropping points in a scoreless draw at Angers. And Bordeaux also played to a draw 1-1 at home to Nancy, contributing their month-long winless run that has seen Jocelyn Gourvenec's team drop from 4th to 8th. Lorient lost in dramatic fashion at Dijon. Defender Jordan Loitas, winner at the death, sealing a 1-0 win with Cholet-Melu manager Sylvain Ripoll sacked in the aftermath. Lille won 2-1 at home to Bastia, moving out of the drop zone on goal difference, that thanks to a superb free kick from Sebastian Corchia. Rennes, meanwhile, continued to improve, rising to 6th on the back of substitute Kamik Grosicki's brace in a 2-1 derby win at Nantes. Although the news that defender Mexe is set to miss 2 months will surely be frustrating for Christian Gourcuff. Sunday's early match saw Saint-Etienne record their first away win, 2-0 at hapless Caen, while Nice left it late at Metz, Alisson player scoring on 84 minutes to complete a hat-trick in a 4-2 victory that sees Les Aiglons improve their hold on first place. In Le Classique, new-look Marseille's five-man defence did well to frustrate Paris Saint-Germain in an encouraging start for new boss Rudy Garcia. And in Ligue 2 news, Brest and Le Havre both won to sit first and second, although Amiens can go second with a draw or win against Red Star. The Northern club are in action at the time of the recording of this programme. And that's all for the news, but remember, for all your latest in the French football world, head on over to our website at www.getfootballnewsfrance.com and follow us on Twitter at GFFN. We start this week with the big fixture of the weekend between Paris Saint-Germain and Marseille that ended in a 0-0 draw at the Parc des Princes. It was a bit of a game between attack and defence, almost like it was a training match. But Philippe, PSG couldn't really force a winner in this one, and they struggled to create a load of real clear-cut chances in this one.
No. So first things first, Marseille have a new manager, Rudy Garcia. He played Catenaccio 5-3-2. The game was quite reminiscent, I thought, of France versus Albania at the Euros with that formation. Tactically, it was quite good. I thought Rolando had great ratings from most of the press. So did Fanny. So did the fullbacks. Even Sakai defended quite well. Problem being with PSG, unlike France against Albania, they didn't take their chances. Cavani missed an open goal, which is not really that surprising these days in the big occasion. I mean, he has scored a couple. I was quite surprised to see Kurzawa on the bench. I've said it before. The game against Bordeaux, I think it was a couple of weeks back, where I said that PSG are twice as threatening in going forward when Kurzawa is on the pitch, which is not really logical when you consider that Kurzawa was a left back, albeit a very very attacking left back. But why is he so good? Is that the wingers are actually not threatening. Di Maria had a decentish game, I would say, having a few props at Pelé, nothing that Johan Pelé can't deal with. He's just not performing to the standard he is that he should be. The standards being the first half of last season. Lucas is extremely frustrating, and Cavani misses an open goal. So PSG didn't take their chances. Marseille were quite resilient, and it didn't make any mistakes. They probably, I'm not even sure if they deserve anything from their game. I would say yes from their resilience. So Garcia came what he got what he came for, and fair play to him. An extremely frustrating game to watch, of course, for anyone who likes French football, who was looking forward to that game. It actually kind of came a bit too fast during the schedule. It was only I think on Tuesdays I realised that the Sunday evening game was going to be PSG. But yes, quite frustrating all in all.
Eric, in terms of Paris Saint-Germain, it was a game where, very strange game where Marseille failed to register a shot on target throughout the entire game. It's the first time, at least in Opta stats, that's happened. Was it just a case of the missing opportunities, or were individuals not playing to their full potential? What was the real underlying reason PSG didn't claim a win they probably should have had?
Well, I think obviously we have to look at Cavani. I think that Philip makes a fair point on Di Maria. I think that he's not been the player that we've expected him to be, that he's been for much of his time at PSG. We saw his arrival from Manchester United give him a real lift. He appeared to be much the player that he had been at Real Madrid after the unsettling events that had occurred with his family at Manchester, and that many had pointed to as being the cause of his decline in play. But as much as he still works wonders, I think, again, without Levin Kurzawa on that left side, without Di Maria at his full potential, PSG really become an unbalanced team. That was in some way ameliorated by having Rabiot on the left rather than the right. He was able to get forward and aid in the attack as well to some degree, but too much of the play simply was going through Aurier and Lucas on the right, and that made it a little bit too easy for Marseille to defend that, as you rightly say, Catenaccio style. Rod Fani again did have a fantastic match. I don't think we should undersell Rolando's return to the team. This is a player who's played at Porto and Inter Milan. Has a wealth of experience at really some of Europe's finest clubs, and it was surprising to see him being kept on the bench with regularity by Franck Passy. But I think that given the form of Doria, have a solid three-man defense that can be built upon going forward. Thomas Hupichan is an option off the bench as well to give them added depth. And I think more credit needs to go to Marseille, though. I think that I hadn't been really convinced, frankly, by the defensive performances, in particular of Hiroki Sakai, to date this season. And as much as I have a lot of love for Henri Berimo, both from his time at Montpellier and at Lyon, he's a wonderfully attacking fullback. His defensive solidity is often called into question. But he and Sakai, I think, really played that wing-back role to great success. And it was just a really impressive tactical decision by Rudy Garcia. And I think that as profligate as PSG could be, I think that credit also needs to go to the visitors for really steadying out their stall in a very solid manner.
And just before we move on to talk about Marseille, Philip, I wanted to talk about Marco Verratti, who
I was actually going to mention him.
Yes, he was not particularly pleased, shall we say, at coming off during the second half. What did you make to his performance, and do you think it was the right move to take him off, or would it have been a better decision to take off someone like Thiago Motta and try and put extra impetus into the team rather than removing someone like Verratti?
There are many things I would do differently had it been Unai. First of all, Kurzawa should have been on the pitch. I'm not sure if he was injured or not. I have no idea. I think that things should have changed at halftime at the earliest. We say all these. We have all this praise for these Latin managers, so Spaniards and Italians. So we used to do that for Carlo Ancelotti, how they are tactically astute and how our Ligue 1 managers. And I was listening to a podcast. It was about Genesio not being quick enough to change his system against Juventus. Well, to me, that was a case last night of Unai not being quick enough to change his system, and when he did, I don't think it was quite, shall we say, efficient. So first of all, Kozao should have been on the pitch. I have no idea why Lucas is starting ahead of Benafa or Jesse. I would have. I'm call me not a Thiago Motta lover, but I don't. I really do believe that Krychowiak should be given more chances in playing ahead of Thiago Motta. I thought he was not that bad against Arsenal. That was a game at the Parc des Princes. Verratti, yeah, he got a lot of flack from the press.
Philip, I'm sorry, I gotta jump in here. You have no idea why Lucas Moura, scorer of 5 goals in the league,
I'm
is
sorry,
starting ahead of Hatem Ben Arfa.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's just not there in the big games. I'm just not convinced. And I would have started him. I just on form. I think that game has a particular. I'm talking about the game against Marseille.
Right.
Has a particular feeling to Ben Arfa more than it has to Lucas. So I would have started him. But that's me. But maybe it's me just because it's Marseille. I mean, I do realize that Ben Arfa hasn't been playing all that much, and that Lucas has been scoring goals. But yeah, maybe that's just a personal thing. And going back to Verratti, yeah, he got a lot of flack, and he just. He reacted badly. I'm not sure if I agree with all the criticism he got. And it is true that Matuidi not being as technically good as Verratti, PSG did play a bit better, but it was still quite abysmal. So I'm going for a bit harsh there on Verratti.
That's fair enough. Mo, let's go on to the positives, really. And although they didn't have a shot on target, Marseille defended resolutely and with a new formation and a new manager at the helm. What was your opinion of the game?
Yeah, I mean, after a nerve-wracking 90 minutes, I actually really enjoyed last night's performance. Probably because I've come in here a few times, and obviously I think you guys have also in previous podcasts have spoken about how bad defensively Marseille are. There's lack of defensive cohesion. There's missed opportunities. Players, especially the Velodrome last season, easily finding space behind the back, the centre backs. But it was refreshing to see a proper, resilient defensive performance last night. And I know, the neutrals might have said that it might have been a very boring Classico. It might have been, having five-man defense is pretty ironic, given the club's motto is straight to the goal in English as well. But considering only 2 training sessions and 48 hours in the job, and Marseille have lost 11 or 12 games in a row to Paris Saint-Germain, there's only one option. Is very, very unlikely to score at the Parc des Princes. I think Paris have only failed to do so maybe 5 or 6 times. I think in the last 4 years, 3 or 4 years. So there's only one thing, and that's trying to limit Paris Saint-Germain creatively as far as possible. And they did that to perfection last night. I think there were a couple of hairy moments. I was speaking to another Marseille supporter last night as well. The fact that Marseille were pretty lucky in certain occasions, maybe to Cavani's profligacy, or the fact that defensively at times Marseille were a little bit creaky, but the last-ditch interceptions and the tackles that came instinctively right at the death proved, it was a lifesaver really. But I think what we've seen last night shows that the defensive capabilities of OM, and I think from going forward there can really be no more like shambolic defending, considering that they've actually put in a performance of real defensive quality last night as well.
Yeah, and it makes my prediction on the preview show. We won't mention it at all, but it makes it look very, very silly. As we've already mentioned, it's obviously the first game of the Garcia era, and we've already seen him put a bit of a stamp on this team already. What do you think going ahead we can expect from him and this Marseille team? Is this a real building block for them to probably build at least some attacking play next week?
Yeah, I think I would definitely hope that last night was a bit of a one-off, but he did do the job. I think what I like to see about Garcia is, the tinkering with formations. And I think at Roma he was also a little bit criticised about not having that much of a plan B, so not too different from Michel at OM last season. But with Franck Passy, we've actually kind of stuck, or even Bielsa aside, we've kind of stuck almost religiously to the 4-4-2, 4-2-3-1 formations. But it's nice to see Rudy Garcia kind of looking at what he's got, and he will have the same until January at the very least, and trying to see how well to approach a game. I think his assistants were already. I think one of his assistants was watching the match in the press box last night just to see how the team set up from high above, how the tactical setup looks, and changing it. And his decision not to bring on Maxime Lopez towards the end of the second half, and constantly analysing the tactical shape of the game is something really, really refreshing. And I think no manager apart from Marcelo Bielsa, kind of achieved that. I think going forward, he'll kind of will have to look, how will we best set up the team to achieve the goals? Because Marseille do have to take, I think, one game at a time, really, until the market opens. We already talk about maybe snatching the Europa League qualification place, which would obviously be I think a massive success considering the way that the season was about to go. But I think he will just have to take each game one by one. But I would also like to see more tactical innovation. Will OM kind of revert to his 4-3-3 at home next week against Bordeaux? How will he set up on Wednesday in the Cup against Clermont? I think there'll be a change. Maybe he might just settle back, for a 4-2-3-1, maybe more daring formation at home, but away from home when Marseille have actually been really, really poor lately. Maybe he'll kind of just maybe set his team up a little bit more defensively and kind of, focus on getting the points and getting the objectives. I think, Marseille are actually laden at the back. So many defenders and so many players that can do a job on the bench. You had three on the bench, three on the starting 11 yesterday, and Rekik and Huberchan as well. And you've got a couple of others on loan as well. Marseille are really, really stacked to the back. So it'll be interesting to see how we kind of go forward.
And I do want to get you in this, Eric, in this tactical thing that Marseille decided to do. Were you also a little bit surprised that Rudy Garcia seemed to go away from what we probably expected of him with that 4-3-3 that we've known from his time at Lille and at Roma?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that L'Equipe had been one of the first sources to break this, and I was reading the early edition on Saturday evening, my Saturday evening, that is, ahead of the match, and they had put forth this 3-5-2 as a lineup, and I was really surprised. Obviously Garcia is a manager of some experience and wants to put his stamp on the team, but he's never been known as a defensive manager. But as Mo rightly says, you've got a host of able defenders. You've got your two fullbacks, your two best fullbacks in Sakai and Berimo, who aren't the most solid defensively. It does make sense. I do think that it requires. It's going to require some work in terms of sorting out the attacking combination, because I think that Thauvin has had a good start to the season, but I don't know that he necessarily convinces as a 10, which is where he was playing last night off of Angie and Gomis, at least initially. I do think that Remy Cabella needs to be included in the team in some way. So there's still some work to be done as to how the attackers fit together. I think there's a lot of interesting pieces there. I think in that quartet of Angie, Gomis, and Cabella, and Thauvin, you have players who all have proven that they have what it takes to be a decent player at a Liga level, at least a level of European qualification, if that is to be the target this season, which given how congested the middle of the table is, I don't think is totally out of bounds for Marseille. So that's going to be the issue going forward. And I think that if Garcia rather can get that right in sorting out that midfield, and we'll also bringing along some of these younger players, the likes of Zabo Anguissa and Machach and a few others. Then yeah, Marseille should be a little bit more positive to watch going forward. But there is still definitely some work to do in that attacking third to make the best of the talent that he does have available to him, and then attacking third.
Was I the only one to actually notice that while most of the media pictured it at a 3-5-2 was actually it was to me a 5-3-2. We had a clear separation between the back five and the three, and I thought Zambo and Anguissa was on the right, Thauvin was on the left, and Diarra was the defense shielder of the back five, which is quite an important job in that situation. But it didn't seem to me that often, at least in the first half, that Thauvin was a number 10 behind the two strikers. He was often seen on the left hand side, maybe trying to mark Aurier, maybe trying to be a nuisance to Lucas. But I didn't really see him centrally. Maybe because Marseille never had the ball. Basically, I'm not sure what the stat was of possession. Was something ridiculous. But it was more. I don't know. I thought Thauvin was more on the left.
No, I think that's a fair point, Philip. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I should clarify that. I meant Thauvin being.
The thing is, it wasn't against you because I've heard this all day, and I just don't. As you say, is it just me?
I think it was private as well. Yeah.
I would rather see Cabella as the creative conduit with Thauvin cutting in from wide areas. He is much better cutting in from wide areas. And sorry, I meant to say Thauvin as being the creative conduit between defensive midfield and attack. He's not really, I think, cut out to be that sort of player. So, but yeah, as Mo is saying there as well, I do agree with you that he's not a number 10 per se, but more being used as a central creative player. So yeah, my apologies.
You're right. I just want to bookend this sort of speech on Marseille with a final little word from each of you. Mo, I'll start with you. We were rumbling around last week of what the manager would be before Garcia was announced, but now it is Garcia. Can he make this club big again?
Yeah, I think he's got the profile to do so. He's had success as well in Roma, and also the promise of investment will kind of, any manager will be lucky, to have kind of the promise investment that he has, and he'll be able to stamp, his kind of image on the side, and he's already pretty experienced as well when it comes to Liga. I think he's already made he's already made a mark as of last night, and it'll kind of be interesting. I think we'll be able to judge him from the spring. Maybe considering where Marseille are, if they've made a vast improvement in terms of league position. But on paper, definitely, I think it's a great match between Rudy Garcia and OM. He's one of the rare French coaches as well that's had international experience, like the statement said. And obviously, Marseille are I think still the biggest job in France, aside from the national team. And so I think it's a great match on paper. Whether it actually happens, it actually transpires, I think we'll just have to see. It's too early to say.
I think it's also the kind of managers that will enable the decent players left to actually stay until the end of the season. And I really mean Lassana Diarra. I can see him staying in much more probability in January than if Passy was still the manager, which is a great point. Which is a great plus for Marseille having that kind of player.
Do you think that will be the case since he's had the captaincy stripped? Well, at least for one game at least.
I would be more worried about Mo. Do you know what the issue is with his being sued?
Yeah, well, in fact, he's still got a €10 million lawsuit on him from Lokomotiv, and I don't think nothing's happened with that. I generally think that he's literally waiting for a move to China or the Middle East. And what Marseille does, or whether they want him, I think that he'll just move. Considering, and Rudy Garcia did say at the beginning on his press conference on Friday, he did say, "I'll have a talk with him, and I really hope he stays with us." But the captaincy also rests, whether he wants to stay. And surprise, yesterday, Timmy Gomis was captain, although he was, I think, I did like to point out that he was kind of gracious. He put in a real performance last night in midfield without the armband as well. but I just don't think he'll stay in January really. As much as Marseille really do need him, considering, I thought Zambo was horrific last night, and Diaby will probably no longer play again.
Yes,
we cannot rely on just Vanker, Zambo, and Lopez in midfield at this point in time. And I think Marseille really, really do need Diarra to say. But like Phil said, Rudy Garcia is the man, to kind of persuade him, and he's got the reputation as well.
The thing about Diarra, I don't think he's that kind of person that would throw his toys out of the pram and saying, "Oh, I'm not a captain. I'm just going to sit there and mope." And not. I think he's a bit more professional than.
Yeah, no, I agree. I just think that fine is hanging over him so much that whether captain or no captain, he's angling for a move out, and I just think football, doesn't really much to do with it anymore, for sporting reasons.
Yeah, which is a real shame.
A real shame.
Thank you again, Mo, for joining us this evening and
no problem.
chatting Marseille as always. No problem. I'm hopeful we'll have you on again soon.
Thanks.
Just to sort of link from this now and some chat that's maybe a little bit different and a bit more interesting. Well, interesting to some at least, as Ligue 1 signed a deal with EA Sports this week to brand the E-Ligue as they make their own esports league. And combined with that news, Paris Saint-Germain have bought a League of Legends team that's with the former star from the European team called Yellow Star, or to give him his real name, Borakim. He's the head of esports at Paris Saint-Germain. And I thought I would talk about this because it's an interesting deal, both for the league, who are setting up a FIFA esports league, and for Paris Saint-Germain, who, as I've mentioned, is setting up that League of Legends team. Now, to start with the League of Legends side of things, just to give you some statistics, because I know, unfortunately, my two esteemed guests aren't so much clued up on the esports scene as maybe some of us are. The finals for the League of Legends tournament from 2014 was 27 million viewers over something of 200 countries. That went up to 36 million viewers last year. The final for this tournament is next Saturday, so that's expected to double. The prize pool is around the 4 million mark, and that is expected to be around, I've read around about the 6 million mark come this next weekend. But it's an interesting play by a lot of French teams, because that's every single French team are hiring 2 players to do the FIFA esports league that will be starting sometime in the near future. And it's an interesting marketing ploy with esports growing across the world. Like I've mentioned, there's plenty of people tuning into the League of Legends stuff, and also other brands are building up bigger profiles such as Dota 2, and FIFA are looking to cut into that market. So maybe that's something to keep an eye on, especially with smaller league and teams putting players in there. Yes, it might cost them a little bit, not an enormous amount at least, to put them out there, but it gets the name out there, it gets the branding out there, and hopefully with Ligue 1 being the first country to sort of do this, hopefully it will build some more opportunities and marketing, branding, and get that knowledge of the teams out there in the future. So it's a slightly odd but exciting time for Ligue 1 in a different way. But back to the football on the pitch. Another week, and it's another Lyon loss, unfortunately. They're 13 points adrift with 5 losses on the season. And after leading against Guingamp as well, Eric, how does Genesio stop the rot?
Honestly, this season is starting to smack of last season. I thought that Lyon did fantastically well at the weekend, or during midweek, withstanding the pressure from Juventus and getting, not the win, but I think a creditable performance on our shoulders. But now, I think this team looks lost. It looks frustrated, and it looks like the same team that Hubert Fournier was fired from a little less than a year ago. This team looks depressed and out of sorts. We can certainly point to individual errors against Marseille, particularly Raphael and Nicolas Nkulu for Coco's 2 goals. But the fact of the matter is, this team is not performing to a level on an individual basis as well, and that's down to the manager. I wrote a little piece in the Talking Points that'll be published tomorrow, that saying that the thing that links each of the teams that are in the top 4 in Ligue 1 is that each of them have a center back who's taking a new and expanded role. For PSG, obviously that's not by addition, it's by subtraction in terms of David Luiz, but Toulouse, Monaco, and Nice have all brought in a new center back. Dante and Christophe Julien and
Glick.
Glick. Right. Marseille or Lyon did the same thing. They brought in Nicolas Nkulu. Great. I mean, he's a player who has a wealth of experience with Cameroon, with Marseille, and the Champions League. But even as he's been probably Lyon's best defender this season, the team haven't really done enough to solidify at the back. They, more than Samuel Umtiti, in the past year, they've also lost Milan Bisevac, who, again, not the fastest, but a decent Ligue 1 player. Bakary Kone, again, a decent player. He can do a job. Lindsay Rose moved permanently as well. There hasn't been enough players brought in to play central defense, and I think that Genesio in that defense is faced with a real lack of options right now. I mean, yes, Jeremy Morel can do a job, but this team needs to, if they're going to persist with Genesio, bring in another center back, and if they're not, bring in someone who can solidify this team and perhaps revert them to a more defensively oriented 4-3-3. I do think that the continued presence of Sergi Darder in the team also doesn't offer enough protection for that back four. A real central midfielder, if we look at the very best teams playing a 4-3-3, I'm thinking particularly of PSG, is that those central defenders, or so central midfielders, truly can shuttle back and forth and aid the deep line midfielder in protecting that back four, particularly when the fullbacks get forward. And when you have a right back of the likes of Raphael and a left back of the likes of Machis Ribas, you are going to have attacking fullbacks, and it's important that they get forward. But right now, this team doesn't have balance, and the attacking players seem short of confidence as well. It's just a really frustrating situation front to back, and I think Lyon need to make some decisions pretty quickly here over what's going to be the issue here. I don't mean to imply that this is solely Genesio's fault. I do think that Lyon should have been a little bit more considered in their transfer strategy in the offseason, but the fact of the matter is he has a group of players in central defense that, along with Mamana, I shouldn't neglect to mention him. He's had a decent enough start to the season, that aren't performing to their levels, and he needs to figure out a way to make this work and quickly, or a chance of returning to the Champions League is going to be lost.
A couple of comments that I heard is there seems to be as much off the pitch problems and on the pitch problem. Eric, do you follow Jean-Michel Aulas on Twitter?
Yes, but I follow 300 people. I don't see everything he says. Was there a specific comment you?
No. I mean, it's other people that follow him. I don't follow him. Otherwise, it's basically the problem of following too many people and can't really keep up with it. Saying it was, of course, followed by a win against Dynamo Zagreb where he went overboard, saying the players are fantastic, I've got the best manager in the world, blah, 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 blah. Basically bigging the whole setup after a Champions League win. I mean, fine, it was a Champions League win, but it was against Dynamo Zagreb. And here there were other problems, the omission or near omission of Aulas from the league committee. I'm not sure if you guys heard of that.
Mm-hmm.
Another problem would be that in the organizational chart there seems to be this problem between Bernard Lacombe and Gérard Houllier, who can't stand each other. They're both supposed to be director of football or something like that. And Genesio, when he has this problem, when he wants to implement a 3-5-2, when he wants to go back to a 3-4-3 or 4-2-3-1, 4-5-1, whatever, who does he turn to? If it's Lacombe advising him, Houllier is going to say, "You should listen to me, not to him," and vice versa. So there really seems to be, a lot of off the pitch problems. On the pitch, I would say, I mean, Genesio was fine in the second half of last season. And again, is it just the Champions League game, the added pressure and all that? Because Yeah, it certainly would have helped Lyon's confidence going into the Guingamp game had they not lost to Juventus. I mean, like I said, didn't miss a penalty. They were against an unreal Buffon, but I'm not sure if it's just the Champions League. It's just the added pressure of European competition. Maybe something's a bit lost in the dressing room, and you're right. It does sound quite familiar to last season, where Genesio is probably a couple of weeks away from losing the dressing room.
I don't think we can count out the injury crisis, obviously, and Gonalon being suspended for 4 matches. Toussaint did decently well in his stead, but you're missing Fekir for a stretch, you're missing Lacazette for a stretch, you're missing Raphael for a stretch, and that's going to have an effect. I think Christophe Jallet, this guy, again, he's 33 years old, but he was with France this summer. He's a top quality right back. And he offers much more solidity in that position than does Raphael. Raphael in a 3-5-2, I have a lot of time for. Raphael in a 4-3-3, not so much, unfortunately.
So I do want to jump on that point, actually, Eric, because he did change the formation for this one. Was that the right decision to do? I know in hindsight it's a lot easier to say, but as you mentioned there, that Raphael is not the best of right backs in a 4-3-3, and he leaves his other defenders exposed.
I think if you're going to play a 4-3-3, you can't play, as he did on the evening, both Ribas and Raphael. Both of them are too attack-minded and don't play with enough defensive responsibility. That's why I like the 3-5-2, is that both of them I feel like function fairly well as a wing back. But as orthodox fullbacks, it needs to be either Morel and Raphael or Jallet and Ribas. It can't be both of them at the same time. There needs to be more balance in that 4-3-3. I think the 4-3-3 is the way forward, but again, Nathan, I know you're a big fan of Sergi Darder, but you know what? Maybe a little bit of improvisation here. I prefer Jordan Ferry. I think he isn't not as cultured of a player as is Darder, but he allows more freedom for Tolisso to get forward, and he allows. And he's got more of a fire and an aggression to him. And I think he also, being that he is an academy product, I also think he has a better relationship with his teammates. I put to you, Nathan, I know you'd seen a bit of Darder at Malaga before he come. What do you think his ideal role is? I mean, this is a player who was bought for 12 million. He was not peanuts, especially by Ligue 1 standards.
I think his ideal role, strangely enough, is where Tolisso is playing. But
that's what he usually plays, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And I actually think that Lyon have looked a little better with the 3-5-2. But I'm gonna pin the current problems, especially the problems at the weekend, almost entirely and solely on that back four, because that back four created their own problems and their own mistakes at the weekend. I mean, the first goal isn't great. The second goal is a really poor giveaway, and they don't get in position from there. It's so. I mean, Marcus Coco is standing in the middle of that box for a good 5-6 seconds. Raphael's busting a neck, yes, to get back because he's too far forward before they lose the ball. The centre back in Kula doesn't know. It comes across, it hits him. Yes, it's a little bit awkward, but that's a strange one. And then the third one is so simple. It's a long through from a goalkeeper, and Raphael is caught again too far up the field, and I can't believe that Marcos Coco has literally shifted the ball 2 inches to his right hand side, and Nkulu is done. I watched a lot of bad defending at the weekend with Chris Smalling at Manchester United, and Nkulu did exactly the same. He wasn't close enough to the attacker. It was so simple, and that deflates an entire team for me. And that brings me on to my next question, really, and that is, Eric, surely after 5 defeats, after focusing on the Champions League, Bruno Genesio has to be under pressure now.
I think he is under pressure, but I think holistically, I know he's another one of these managers who have been promoted from within and haven't quite worked out. I'd seen someone. I'm part of there's an OL USA, American Fans of Lyon, Facebook group that I'm part of, and someone on there had mentioned Laurent Blanc maybe a possibility. Okay, I would take that. I think that he did well.
You wouldn't be against that?
No.
Okay.
I think that he's definitely a step up from Genesio. Whether he'd be interested or not, I don't know. I think he might have his sights set a little bit higher than Leon, given his success with PSG and in the past. But the fact of the matter is, I think that Genesio needs to be given at least until the winter break, and to have some of these injuries sorted out. I can't, I'm banging this drum. I can't emphasize enough how important Jallet can be to his team. I know Raphael has the name recognition for a lot of our listeners due to his time at Manchester United, but even at 33 years old or 32 years old, I'm not sure when Jallet's birthday is. He's still a better right back than Raphael. I'm sorry. He's much more composed defensively. He's more of an aerial threat, and he's still able to get forward in a way that doesn't leave the team exposed.
Oh, I don't think anyone is disputing that.
No, I think at 24,
at least not here.
I might be a better right backer than Raphael at the moment. Jesus Christ. Just a quick word on Guingamp, Philip. It's a big win again for them. So 3-1 and
just one little thing very, very quickly. I'm not quite sure what Blanc's reputation stands at in this today. In October 2016, I don't think he would think twice that much about joining a big club like Lyon. Lyon are still a big side, and he doesn't seem to have that attractiveness abroad. Whenever a managerial position is free, Blanc just doesn't come up. So it really, it would make sense to me. It would make sense to him. It would make sense to Lyon. He's got experience. He is ready to play a 3-5-2 in the quarterfinal of the Champions League. Well done on him. But I think it would. I wouldn't be that surprised that it would happen in January, even sooner.
And quickly, a word on Guingamp. They're up to 5th, and they're on 17 points. They're only 3 points behind Paris Saint-Germain, and Koumbari's done a good job with this team, hasn't he?
Yeah, they're still doing the same thing they were doing back in August, back at Windsor, such like the games against Marseille, Jimmy Briand, Yanis Salibur, Coco. They've got quite a good game plan. They're quite aggressive. They're very hard to beat, very hard to score a goal against. And if they start to get those couple of away wins, they could go back to those Europa League adventures. It is quite fascinating how well they've adapted to the new manager, which is Koumbari. And Gourvenec did a great job. He had all the foundations with Guingamp. So it is surprising to see Guingamp winning at Lyon. I was actually in a car listening to it on the radio with a Lyon fan who was about to smash the car. But it was it was still surprising. But then you listen to a commentary, you see, you picture yourself with the radio commentary, and you just think, this is happening, and it's only surprising from the Lyon side. But you if you've seen Guingamp play a couple of times this season, they're a good side and very hard to beat.
And just to bookend on Guingamp, they've lost 3 games this season. They've only been by 1 goal, all 3 of them, and they have a really interesting run of Angers, Dijon, Bordeaux, Caen.
And we like the goalkeeper as well. I think he's quite good as well. Johnson, isn't it?
Carl Johan Janssen, yeah. An assist to Raphael. Yeah. I will say, you two both laughed at me when I put forth Guingamp as a dark horse for the Europa League earlier this season.
Yeah.
Oh, did we?
Go back and listen to that previous show.
I will happily take that back. That's fine.
We're going to talk about another talking point, and we're probably going to mention one of your other predictions that were actually spot on. Yeah,
and that's a perfect segue, as they might say, because the first casualty of the season, of a permanent manager at least, was comes in the shape of Sylvain Ripoll at Lorient. They sank to the bottom of the table with their 3rd loss in a row in a heartbreaking final goal from Dijon that they ran out 1-0 winners. Having only scored 6 goals in 10 games as well. Philip, where has it gone wrong?
I think it hasn't started the best way, but I don't think it's a catastrophe, shall we say, from Lorient. I believe that they made the right signings late on in the window, and I believe that the chairman of Lorient had some kind of confidence to sack Ripoll, even though they did they did achieve some decent results. I mean, they lost at Dijon, but that goal was scored in the 93rd minute, third minute of stoppage time, something like that. So they were close to a 0-0 draw away from home, which is hardly a surprising result and hardly a bad result. So I think the chairman, I forgot his name, benefited from the inexperience of Ripoll. For example, had Antonetti been the manager of Lorient, I don't think he would have been sacked. He would have said, "Okay, you're a manager. You've done your thing. You are not a shit manager, so I'm going to leave you 1 or 2 games more." But Ripoll is not Fred Antonetti. So he got the sack, even though some performances of Lorient were quite solid, and exactly like the one last season. Except last season they had a bit more luck, they had a bit more cohesion, and when the manager keeps being the same and same again, it just starts getting tedious, and motivation is much harder to come by. So I'm not sure it's the right move. Honestly, I still don't believe Lorient will go down, but I don't think it was a necessary sacking, because I mean they are going to be towards the bottom for with a squad like this, whoever's in charge. But I believe Ripoll wouldn't have had Lorient relegated.
Well, Eric, we mentioned a couple of weeks ago after they'd lost 4 in a row to start the season. Since then, they've had 2 wins and 4 more defeats that sees them sit bottom of the table with just 6 goals. They've barely moved on from that total as well. Was this the right move for you to take Ripoll out of there?
I agree with Phil. I don't see Ripoll being the problem. I feel their transfer strategy is the problem. I mean, let's face it. We should also say with a caveat that one of those wins was against Lyon, and a win that's looking less impressive by the day, and also was due to a blinder by Benjamin Lecomte.
And the other was against Lille, so.
Oh, that's
yeah.
So yeah, 6 dubious points there. But no, in all seriousness, we have Lorient selling Rafael Guerrero, getting a good price for him, getting a great price for Didier Ndong. But where's that money been reinvested? Cafu, Lindsay Rose, who's already with the team, and Steven Moreira. The club are probably making a net profit of somewhere on the order of 25 million euro on this. And the players they are bringing in, Arnold Mwemba, Jeremy Allier, Mikel Siani, players in their early to mid-30s who can probably still do a job in Ligue 1, but this is coming at the expense of a decent array of younger talent at the team. We'd seen earlier in the season last year the likes of Denis Bouanga and Valentin Levine Benjamin Jeannot put themselves forward as players who could perhaps make an impact were they to be given consistent time with the team. But now with this strategy of bringing these veteran players who I'm sure Ripoll's under a good deal of pressure to play them, given the wages that they're probably on, is stymieing the development of this team. And we've seen time and again, Guingamp, the topic of our last conversation, Lyon 2 seasons ago, a youth movement can lead to success in Ligue 1. And teams that have trusted in their younger players have more often than not, as long as there's some solidity there, and you've got a great goalkeeper and decent defenders. Zaro Torre in particular, I think, is a decent center back. There is something to be said for Lorient as being a team that is getting it wrong by turning to these older heads. I mean, there's no reason that this team should be where they are, especially with the attacking abilities that we know the likes of the 2 strikers have. That's Mukanjo and Waris. I mean, yes, we can have the caveats about them blowing hot and cold, what have you, but there's still way too much talent on this team for them to be bottom of the league right now. It's down to poor strategy by the hierarchy, and I think Ripoll is taking the fall here.
If anything, Ripoll has actually built the foundations for whoever's going to take charge in giving a usage chance to Pierre Vermel, who played two substitute appearances and scored one, and to Erwin Kofi, who's also a striker, 3 starts and 1 sub. So these guys have already played a game in Ligue 1, which is absolutely massive for your confidence and how you set yourself before a game. It does seem like a bit of a Arribagé conundrum where he does throw the young guys at the deep end, but he doesn't get the right results and gets sacked and replaced by someone extremely experienced and who reaps the benefit and saying he gave usage chance, even though he didn't really, even though Use was given his chance under the previous regime. This is basically what I think is going to happen. I think the signings are basically secure signings, shall we say, for Mbemba and Siani, because they are experienced guys, and it is quite important to have those guys when you're in at the deep end in March, April, where they'll need to not concede a goal. But I think they have started a bit, but this is the beginning. This is why I'm just saying, I still see them not going down directly, considering that 18th is going to be a playoff against the third best team in Ligue 2, which is a huge change actually.
Yeah, and I'm just looking over the team now, and Eric, you mentioned the talent of the strikers, and Maji Waris has failed to score in 9 matches. That's not good enough. Benjamin Mukanjo, fair enough to him. He scored 4 goals, 2 from the penalty spot. But other than that,
there's only 3 scorers in that team.
The Jimmy Cabo's grabbed
Jimmy
one.
Cabo, Amel, and Mukanjo.
Yeah, you've mentioned Amel already. I can't believe that they're not creating anything in these or scoring these goals. I've seen them in numerous games, especially Waris. I think he's missed 2 absolute sitters. You're both right. I think they definitely have the talent to stay up, but again, you can never really trust that in Liga sometimes. I mean, if you look at the teams above them, Nancy are above them, who obviously grabbed a point at the weekend that lifted them above them, and then they're 4 points adrift of Caen, Montpellier, Lille, and Bastia. And other than maybe Caen, I think all 3 of the other teams are better than Lorient. And then you're struggling a little bit unless Metz or Dijon come back at you, although they've had relatively decent starts. Then at this time of the season, you're starting to sink in that mire you don't want to be in, because if they keep going on as they are, and I'm just checking their fixtures for the next couple of games to see if they've got any underlines. But that's the problem with that Dijon match as well, that it's such a key game that they've lost, and they've got a chance against Montpellier next week, you'd say. They've got Bordeaux, Monaco, Metz, and Rennes before the end of November. So, yeah.
I don't know if it's Nice's fault, but Metz is fastly becoming the worst defense in Ligue 1. So if Erding is not performing and Enget, they're going to be in trouble. I mean, it's great with all the fairy tale start. We're all very happy for them. And the same goes for Dijon. I don't think Dijon is going to have many wins this season. But if anything, I would actually put Dijon above Metz in the final standings. One team that you did mention, and this is where I'm going back to what Eric's prediction was actually spot on at the beginning of the season, was Caen being in huge trouble without Andy Delors up front. I covered this riveting game against Saint-Etienne on Sunday at 3. Caen were awful. I mean, I know they had players that were unavailable, injured, maybe suspension or anything, but there was absolutely nothing there. I can see something there for Lorient, but Santini just didn't provide anything, and Saint-Etienne did play 3 days before. It's extremely sincerely worried for Caen. And it pains me to say this because I actually like them. But yeah, they're my new favourite, shall we say, of finishing bottom.
That's not always the kiss of death from you, at least, though.
No,
I'll take some assurance from that. But
Let's give you all.
Yeah, I just want to mention possible replacements now, Eric. And there's been a few names thrown about. Elie Bope has supposedly rejected an approach, and Hubert Fournier's name's been thrown out there as well. Have you got a name or someone you'd like to see at the helm of Les Merlus?
I think Fournier deserves a chance. I think that there was too much dressing room unrest at Lyon, and yes, the team did improve remarkably under Genesio, but I think that he's proven himself, given his prior stints in Liga, to be given another chance and to take this team out of the drop zone at least.
The thing is with Fournier, if he does take this job, what kind of a manager is he? Because he did a great job at Reims. He got them up, I think. Maybe not.
Yeah.
He did. Oh, good. He made them a solid Liga outfit. Then he went to Lyon, had a great season with that 4-4-2 diamond, used the youth very, very well, built on the foundations of Rémi Garde. And now he's out of the job, and he's going to manage another team that is extremely unfancied. I mean, Reims has not used to be good in the Raymond Coppa days, 1950s. But that's a bit outdated. Lorient are just as unfancied, if not more. So if he does accept, I mean, is he going to be that kind of manager that goes to sides that need rebuilding, need to get promoted from Ligue 2, need to become established, and then once again being taken by one of the big boys? Because that would have been a bit of a, things happening over and over again. Because I do believe he deserves a bit better than Lorient. No offense to them.
Well, but at the same time, Philip, his reputation's at such an ebb. He does have this experience of bringing through young players. I'm thinking of the likes of Issa Mandi and Nico de Préville at Reims. And to continue that program with Lyon, he's ideal. He's ideal to bring through the wealth of younger talent that's on display at Lorient. Even the signings they made in the summer, Cafu is only 23. There's still a lot of development to be had for Les Merlus, and I think Fournier would personally be an ideal candidate. He can play a 4-4-2 diamond, even perhaps put Cabo in between the strikers or Jouf behind the strikers as a playmaker. There's a lot of possibilities there, and I think that Fournier is probably the best on the market. I mean, I can't think of anybody else off the top of my head. I know
I've got a few other names.
Paul Le Guen was rounded about.
Yeah, there's Guy Lacombe being bounded about as well. And there's also
he's been out of the game for too long. That's what you mean.
And Eric Roy as well is another name that's been thrown into the mix.
Maybe I'm not convinced about his. Maybe I don't know. But
very left field names. I think
Fournier's better.
Yeah, at least we know where they should really go. But another one is President Ferry is also considering possibly Roland Courbis. What would you think to that kind of move, Eric?
No.
No.
Sorry. No. I think
just doesn't fit.
We've seen in Ligue 1 time and time again managers who give chances to youth. If there is a strong level of achievement and in that academy, have success. We're seeing it with Campoire this season at Guingamp. We've seen it with Lyon in the recent past. And it just makes sense to have someone like Fournier has a proven record for developing players and continuing to be a part of that continuum as he had it at Lyon. And the rest of these players, I mean, when's the last time that Lacombe or Le Guen have been in club management? It's been a decade, maybe. I mean, when did Le Guen leave PSG? 2008.
Yeah,
something like that.
Something like that. I think that's spot on.
Yeah, I mean, he was. He got Cameroon to the World Cup. I mean, great, but
2009
is what. He's been nowhere since then.
2009.
So. Anyway,
plus, why? I mean, why would you just go out and manage Oman? I mean, it's
money.
Probably. But even for a lot of money, I don't think I would do that.
You wouldn't.
I would rip your hand off. I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Same.
Yeah, I don't know. It didn't work out.
No, and at least it might be interesting to see who Lorient end up bringing in at least. But that's all the time we have for this week.
Just one last thing is that
Go.
the reserve manager, as it usually is the case, Franck Hez is going to be on the bench against Rennes for Wednesday evening's host trip to Rennes, which is a Brittany derby and the Coupe de la Ligue.
A win there and a possible statement until the weekend. Maybe it's another assistant manager that takes a job. But that's all. That's definitely all we have the time for this week. My thanks to Mo earlier, Eric, Philip, and to all of you listening at home. Join us for the preview show hosted by Eric on Thursday, and we shall be here at the same time, same place next week. A bientôt and goodbye.